Hi, my name is Ben Filchak. I'm the studio director here at the Steelyard, and today we're going to talk about the function of the coal forge, specifically turning it on, turning it off, seeing high flames, low flames, talking a little bit about the materials that we're going to be using for fuel, which is our coal, which eventually does get turned into a material called coke. That is the main material that burns in the firebox. Today, we're going to be talking about using the coal forge, general, how to light it up, how to shut it down, and how all of the pieces and parts work to utilize the coal forge. So to start, I'm going to make sure I got coal in my bucket right here. I'm going to make sure I have some newspaper. Make sure that we have propane to light the forge. You could also use matches. Today I'm going to use a propane torch. And to start, what I like to do is I start with my newspaper, usually about 1 to 2 sheets. Open it up nice and flat, stick my fist in the middle, kind of wrap it around my hand, twist the bottom like this, and then make this kind of like little, I don't know, little like mushroom looking situation. Sorry, make this little mushroom situation out of my newspaper. What I do from there is I take this mushroom, stick it in the firebox, and from there what I like to do is we utilize coke to light the forge, and where coke comes from coal. So to light the forge, we want to use this stuff that's a little bit more fluffy and expanded versus using just straight up coal. And I'll talk a little bit more about how this turns into that. So I have my newspaper in my firebox. I've cleaned out a bunch of coke from the previous use. So that's a very important thing to do, is to keep some of this kind of fluffier looking coal in our firebox. And what I do from there is I will pile a bunch of the coke all around that newspaper. It's kind of a messy situation, but so now that I have a bunch of the coke surrounding our piece of newspaper, I will take a scoop of coal and I'll put it right over here, kind of on that front edge of that firebox, just to get ready for once I start to light my fire. In the Steelyard Studios in particular, we utilize an updraft blast fan to help create better airflow in our chimney, a better draft. So before I start lighting the fire, I will turn on the updraft fan. I will start with that on more or less high speed. As the forge heats up, we can definitely turn that down a little bit, because as the forge heats up, it'll create a little bit better of a draft. So now that I know my fan is on, my hood fan is on, I have my newspaper, coke, coal mixture prepped. I will come down to the left side of the forge. Again, a on-off switch for a fan that is connected to the firebox. I'll turn that on to about like a medium speed. Now that that fan is on, I can light up my propane torch. And what I'll do is I'll kind of light that newspaper that's like a little bit like a wick, and I will get that going. I, in particular, like to utilize the propane torch and really like give it some heat, and not just pull the propane torch away once it's lit. I like to give it a little bit more heat. I feel it takes, it just takes a little bit of some good flame to really get that coal situation kind of ignited. A couple other things that I have here is I have like a poker kind of raker situation. I have my scoop. Really just kind of making sure that all that newspaper gets lit on fire. Sometimes as the newspaper burns, it creates a void in our firebox, so I can tamp that down a little bit. Feeling pretty good. I still got a little bit of a flame. What I might do is I might turn up my fan a little bit on my firebox. Really give that fire some oxygen. And give it a minute. Just watch it. Make sure that I'm not going to blow the flame out. Poke it a little bit, kind of let that coke settle around that burnt newspaper. I can see that it's still lit. I got some smoke coming out. At a point like this, I can still see some fire down there. I might turn my forge back on and give it a little boost. Really what I'm trying to do is ensure that my flame doesn't go out. This propane torch really is it's not cheating necessarily, but it helps a lot. So now you can see, I got this sucker lit. I'll give it a good poke, let it settle. Got some flames, got some smoke. From here, I can add maybe a little bit more coal on that front edge. Because what will end up happening is that coal will light on fire, and that's how we end up with the coke. So we can see it's definitely lit now. From here, I can maybe turn down the airflow a little bit, turn my fan down a little bit, kind of get it to settle in. Give it a moment. So, now that we have our forge nice and lit, it's going nice and strong. I got a little bit of extra coal in the front. Again, I don't want to dump my coal directly on the fire. I want to dump it on this front edge and slowly feed it into the fire. From here, what I can do is my piece of metal that I want to work with today, I can place in that firebox. Again, I can adjust my fan high. I can adjust it low. I like to find somewhere in the middle, maybe the medium-high range. Because you want to make sure that you get some heat. I can check the clinker handle right here. Just make sure that I'm not filling up with a bunch of ash and clinker in that bottom of that pot. You can see I only had it in there for about roughly a minute. It's getting nice and hot right now, but I could leave it in there and it'd be a really beautiful, bright, kind of like butter yellow. This is still a great temperature, but you can see how fast that happens. When I need to, I can dump my metal that I'm working with in a quench bucket that I have off to the side over here. I can put my propane torch away. And there you have it. So, my forge is nice and hot. It's ripping right now. However, I'm done with the process. First thing that I will do is I will turn off my fan. I'll kind of dig out a little bit of this firebox. And what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to like naturally just like let that slow down. So, like I said, I started with turning off our airflow. So there's no airflow coming up through the bottom of the firebox anymore, which is not feeding extra oxygen to the fire. You can see the fire slowly starting to burn down. And like I did, I just kind of like just starting to like make a little bit of a divot and just kind of pull some of that coke out, push it to the side, and I'll just naturally let that fire burn down. I don't immediately want to throw water on it because it's going to create a lot of steam that I can get burnt by. I don't want to, it could possibly create a small explosion, so I'm just going to let that chill for a minute. You can dump a little bit of water on it once it's started to really slow down, but my initial moments of turning it off, I don't want to just throw water on this. Now that my fire has died down, I can come over to my draft fan and I can turn that off. And like I said, just kind of let that naturally cool off. As I'm cleaning up, sweeping up my scale, putting my tools away, giving it a good 20 minutes or so, I can just let that chill. If I did decide to put some water on this, I could use my scoop. Dunk it into a quench bucket. Just got a little bit of water right here. And I can just slowly dump a little bit of water. Don't really need to put much more than that. We don't need to create a huge mess on the floor. We don't need to completely drown it, but a little bit of water just to kind of quench out those coals will help. Will help a bunch. What we're looking at is a speed control for a draft fan, specifically called an up blast draft fan. Here at the steel yard, given all the buildings around us and the shape of our roof, we have a hard time creating a natural draft. So what we were able to do was we were able to install a fan up on the roof that assists the draft of smoke up through our chimneys. Very simple. You can see it says off down here, high, low. Click that on right now, and I can hear it kind of roaring a little bit. Right now it's on the highest setting, middle setting, lowest setting. Again, probably makes sense when you start your coal forge to utilize the highest setting. However, once the forge does get hot, the chimney gets hot, that helps increase draft. So if you don't want to listen to the loudest part of the fan, you can always turn it down to a lower setting. We are looking at the fan control for this particular coal forge. It's located on the left side of the forge towards the bottom underneath our coal bucket. Again, much like the up blast fan, there is an off side and an on side, a high side and a low side. Simply hear that click. This is pointing to the highest speed of the fan. This would be the lowest speed of the fan. As you're operating it, you can kind of hear it go from basically nothing to a little something. But again, off, on, high, low. This handle right here controls what's called the like it's a clinker breaker, and what it is it's like an egg-shaped thing in the bottom of the firebox that breaks up the material that we call clinker, which is this kind of spent gray, brownish kind of stuff. And what it can do is it can clog your airflow. So if your airflow is having trouble, you can either go back and forth, spin it around, and that'll break up the clinker. So we talked about our clinker handle. You can see I can spin it around, it breaks up the clinker, and then what happens is the clinker will end up collecting and dropping into this little zone right here. Periodically, it will fill up. There is a metal bucket that needs to be underneath this because hot coals could fall out of that little clinker collector zone. But quite simply, all I'm going to do is that to empty it.